It's easy to think of gaming laptops as ostentatious machines that prize looks above everything else, but this isn't the case here. The Gigabyte P57X is far more subtle than many of its gaming rivals. However, its understated looks hide a potent specification, one that will see you having to fork out a whopping £2,199. At the heart of this machine is NVIDIA's GTX 1070 GPU. It's one of the firm's new Pascals-powered parts, which means huge efficiency and performance. The mobile GTX 1070 has 2048 stream processors and a 1442 MHz core clock, with a 1645 MHz boost peak and 8 GB of memory. That's more stream processors than the desktop card and a slightly lower speed, which means this mobile variant will achieve parity with the full-fat version. That's not all. Gigabyte has enhanced the GTX 1070 with 5 tiers of overclocking, with the top option improving the speed by around 10%. There are granular fan controls, too. So far, so good, although I have one graphical quibble, the 4K screen. The GTX 1070 is powerful, but on occasion it struggles to handle games at 3840 by 2160. The Gigabyte's nearest competitor is the Aorus X7 V6, which is Gigabyte's high-end gaming brand. That machine also had a GTX 1070 core, yet avoided 4K, instead opting for a sensible 2560 by 1440 panel. The GPU is paired with an Intel Core i7-7700HQ processor. It's a new Kaby Lake chip, which means minor improvements in several categories versus 6th Gen kit. It has 4 hyper-threaded cores clocked to 2.8 GHz and a turbo peak of 3.8 GHz, which means it will compete well with the Aorus. That machine had an i7-6820HK that ran at an overclocked 4 GHz. The P57X offers no CPU overclocking. The P57X here is of the priciest specification, which means a 256GB Samsung SM961 SSD and 32GB of DDR4 memory, 4 times as much as the Aorus. That's good on paper, although that much memory has a negligible impact on games performance and will really only help if you start delving into ultra-high-resolution video editing and 3D work. If this specification proves too costly, the Gigabyte is available as the tweaked P57X V7 CF2, which has a 1080p display and 16GB of memory for £1,899. 2 of last year's P57X V6 models are still around, too, if you are not fussed about Kaby Lake. The £1,699 P57X V6 CF4 and £1,849 P57X V6 CF3 have Core i7-6700HQ processors, 1080p screens and GTX 1070 graphics, with the only change coming in the amount of memory included. Design-wise, this machine looks more home or business laptop than a top-tier gaming portable. The P57X is made from matte-finished metal, with a modest speaker grille, small logos and white lighting, no sign of RGB here. In fact, the only color you'll see is in the form of some orange strips down the sides of the keyboard, alongside small accents on the hinges. Build quality is reasonable, too. There's slight give in the wrist rest and base, and the screen is the only weak point. Its slightly flexible metal is not a terminal problem. It's just as sturdy as the Aorus, and the 3 kg Gigabyte does this while being 200 grams lighter than its stablemate. The base panel pops away once a dozen screws have been removed, and it's easy to access the memory and storage. It's simpler to get inside this machine than the Aorus. That machine had 2 spare memory slots and a vacant M.2 connector. The P57X has no upgrade space. The P57X does have a swappable bay that can be used for an extra hard disk or an optical drive. In this sample it contains a DVD writer. It's also fully kitted out with ports, including USB 3.1 and HDMI 2.0. The GTX 1070 is exceptionally quick. Its 1080p averages of 77 FPS and 112 FPS in Tomb Raider and Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor are smoothly playable, and that latter score is a few frames quicker than the Aorus. The Gigabyte didn't struggle at 2560 by 1440, either. It ran Tomb Raider at 58 FPS and Mordor at 92 FPS, with the Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor result matching the Aorus. It handled GTA 5's very high settings at a solid 60 FPS, too. The GTX 1070 even ran some games at 3840 by 2160. Its 51 FPS score in Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor is 1 frame faster than the Aorus, which indicates that it will play many games at this demanding pixel count. However, the P57X has limits. The toughest titles won't run smoothly at 4K. The GTA 5 4K benchmark delivered a solid 45 FPS average, but its sub-30 FPS minimum means that the game will stutter occasionally. Tomb Raider struggled, with a reasonable 36 FPS average hindered by a 15 FPS minimum. Turning down graphics settings will improve those minimums, but that temporary fix will have less impact as games improve. This issue would have been present on the Aorus X7V6 if it had a 4K screen, and it will occur on any other GTX 1070 notebook. To get around it you'll need a GTX 1080, and that means spending around £2,500 on a machine such as the Scan 3X SLG17 Carbon Extreme. The P57X and the Aorus both have overclocking that delivers small gaming improvements. The P57X's 3D Mark Firestrike score of 12,890 boosted to 13,759 with the machine's top tweak level, while the Aorus jumped from 12,613 to 13,065. That will translate to a couple of frames, but not enough to transform any gaming experience. There isn't much to choose between the P57X and the Aorus, with both performing well and gaining a small overclocked boost. The GTX 1070 will play anything at sub-4K resolutions and on VR headsets, but it won't handle 3840 by 2160 consistently. There isn't much to choose in the CPU department, no surprise, considering the similarities between Skylake and Kaby Lake. The P57X's Geekbench scores of 4044 and 14562 are within 23 points of the Aorus. Expect both machines to handle most CPU-intensive applications, only the toughest work tools will prove challenging. The P57X has quiet, normal and performance fan modes alongside its levels of GPU overclocking, with the gaming option chosen by default. At default settings the P57X is cool and quiet. During games there's a modest whir that increased only a little when I ran the CPU at 100%. That noise dropped in the normal fan mode, and became near silent with the quiet option selected. That's good for working or watching movies, but poor for gaming. It throttles CPU and GPU clock speeds to have frame rates. There's no real performance difference between the normal and performance modes, and temperatures remained decent. The CPU and GPU settled at 85 OK and 76 OK in performance mode, with those increasing by a couple of degrees in normal mode. The P57X is cooler and quieter than the Aorus, and only a little heat made its way to the keyboard and the base, another area where the slimmer Aorus faltered, with a base panel that was too hot to touch.